Well, welcome, and welcome to the Social Venture Partners Dallas bigBANG panel on equity, on uniting for equity. We're very excited about this panel. It is also produced with United Way of Metropolitan Dallas. My name is Matrice Ellis-Kirk, and I'll be your moderator today. So we're going to just jump right on in. Unlike many cities across the country, Dallas, his history has been filled with oppressive policies and practices. Today, there are well over 100 organizations in Dallas supporting communities most impacted by our city's racial inequities. Yet, Dallas was recently ranked 272 out of 274 in a study of overall economic and racial inclusion. So today, we have leaders from the Boston Consulting Group, the Dallas Regional Chamber of Commerce, and the Citizens Council on our panel here today to launch the Racial Equity Coalition of Dallas. Our first panelist is Erin George. Erin is a core member of BCG here in Dallas, leading the Dallas office. She is a partner as well as working in multiple practices across the organization. What we're most proud of with Erin is that she is a trusted advisor to C-suite executives and provides counsel on a broad range of topics from go-to-market strategies, organization design, and change management. Next, we have Dale Petrowski, who is our CEO of the Dallas Chamber of Commerce, the Dallas Regional Chamber of Commerce, and heavily involved in so many initiatives that we'll be talking about here today with this panelist group. Our next panelist is Jennifer Sampson. Jennifer is a distinguished alum of Baylor University and has led the transformation here at the United Way of Metropolitan Dallas in a way that so many of us are proud of. And last, but certainly not least, we have Kelvin Walker, who leads the Dallas Citizens Council, bringing with him years of experience in the private equity world and understanding how to measure and lead. With that, we thank our panelists for being with us today. Thank each of you. We're going to jump right on in here and go straight to the question and answers, understanding we have a very short period of time here to cover a very, very big topic. Let's start with Erin. Erin, why did BCG decide to make its investment globally, and why did you choose Dallas to begin?
Thanks, Matrice. This is a really important question. We believe we're at a very critical time in history. Earlier this year, America started its largest civil rights movement since the 1960s. And oftentimes when we hear people say racial equity, we believe it's a zero-sum game, which is not true. We believe that if we achieve racial equity, we're increasing the GDP of our communities and increasing the quality of lives for everyone who lives in our communities. BCG understands all of this and understands the importance of racial equity. And so in June, BCG announced a $100 million commitment to pro bono funds over the next 5 years, focusing specifically on addressing racial equity. We see a huge need for this in Dallas. And so we've committed with the partners that we have on the phone here to a multi-year effort. We decided to begin in Dallas, just given the starting point with the data that you showed when we started this conversation.
Yeah. So what's the aspirational vision of the coalition?
Our goal is to make Dallas one of the most equitable cities in America. I know that sounds like a bold statement, but it's what inspires all of us. Through our research, we found that socioeconomic differences do not explain the racial inequities that we see in our society. They're more systemic, and they exist across every system: education, healthcare, housing, criminal justice, and more. And so we believe that regardless of somebody's skin color or the zip code, that they should have an equal chance at achieving those quality outcomes. So we want to bring together all the amazing organizations that exist in Dallas that are focused on many of these efforts today and see what our collective scale can do together to make this change happen.
Yeah, this is such an important project and a very big one. Where do you see the challenges in all of this? And certainly there will be tremendous opportunities.
Yes, there certainly will. I don't think any of us think this is going to be an easy road. That's why it is a multi-year commitment. As you think about some of the challenges, the inequities facing our city are systemic and structural. So they're the hardest types of challenges to tackle. And so we're going to have to do some deep looking, listening to key stakeholders across the nonprofit, private, and public sectors to be bought in and engaged. That's the only way we're going to make change happen. And we have to make sure that people don't just get engaged for the moment, but are engaged for the long haul. And I think that'll be one of the biggest challenges. Mm-hmm. But with challenges come great opportunity as well. And I think the scale of this coalition is going to be one of the most important factors that drives us forward. This isn't a new problem. We're not the first or the only groups that are thinking about attacking it. We know many, many people are. But I think our goal of convening all these great practitioners together presents a very large and differentiated opportunity from Dallas. I also think there's an opportunity to bring forward some of the great data that we have that people haven't necessarily seen. And that's where I think BCG adds a great amount of value. We're driven by data in pretty much everything we do. And so by being able to bring that forward and provide database solutions, we think that's a huge opportunity. And finally, I think that just having this as part of the daily conversation will help us enable this to be a much longer lived set of changes.
Yeah, and we're so looking forward to the change actually manifesting itself. So with that, each of you as partners in this coalition bring a tremendous group of individuals as well as the meat of large and sustainable organizations. So talking about each of your expertise, I'd love to hear your role in this coalition. And let's start with Dale with the regional chamber.
Matrice, thank you very much. Thanks for hosting this. Really appreciate that. Couldn't have a better person doing it. And I want to thank BCG for pulling this together. Whenever something big needs to be done in our community, BCG is there. They always step up as such talented people and such people of good hearts. So thank you, Aaron. Really do appreciate it. I'll tell you a little bit about what we're doing, Matrice, at the Chamber. In the wake of George Floyd's tragic killing, our board, led by our chair, John Alajide, moved quickly, moved decisively, created a DEI council, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Council, and decided to focus in 4 areas. The first is diversity in leadership. That means diversity in boards, diversity in C-suites. The second area, education and workforce, which is everybody deserves a good education so they can have a good job and a good life. Third area is community investment in underserved areas, living wage jobs near where people live, transportation, childcare, food insecurity, internet for all. And then the fourth area, which a lot of people, didn't necessarily want to take on, but our board decided to, was policing and criminal justice policy. So building trust between the community and our law enforcement community, bond reform, sentencing guidelines to get people back into jobs so they can rebuild their lives and get back into society again. And so that DEI council was put into place in June, very quickly after George Floyd's death. 3 things you need to know about that DEI council. First of all, it's from now on, the chair of the chamber and the incoming chair of the chamber will always be the chair of the DEI council. That's how important it is. That's the priority it is now, so that it's always being focused on and so that there's always continuity. The second thing is we have 3 co-chairs in each of these 4 areas, and they represent some of the great companies of Dallas. Jacobs Engineering, Hilti, the Mavs, Atmos Energy, Chase, Bank of America, AT&T, Texas Instruments, Toyota, Jones Day, TD Jakes. And then the third thing is, when we gave our board members a chance to sign up for the DEI Council, more than half of them raised their hands. More than 50 of them raised their hands, which shows that there's real enthusiasm for this work and there's real commitment to doing something about it long term. Let's just window dress this thing for a month or 2. This is day after day. This is hard work, and we're going to get after it. So it's quickly become very much a part of our top priority list, and there's a real enthusiasm for it. So we believe it's about doing good for every business, because we believe diversity, equity, and inclusion is critical for the success of every business, and it's for the good of our community as well. So that's at the board level. At the staff level, we hired 2 new senior vice presidents. Senior vice president for diversity, equity, and inclusion. His name is Jared Fitzpatrick. He comes to us from the Dallas Fed, where he led DEI efforts there. Very impressive. Started on Monday. And we have our new senior vice president for community engagement, Tasha Heron-Bruff, who comes to us from Habitat for Humanity. She built a great reputation in Southern Dallas County. She's a great listener. She's got a great heart for people, and she gets things done. And we're really excited to have both of them on board. So we really try to tackle it at the board level and at the staff level. So every day it's in front of us, and we're looking at everything through the lens of diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Those are great building blocks to create something sustainable. So great, great. Thank you so much, Del. Calvin, let's talk about what you all are doing there at the Dallas Citizens Council.
Sure. Again, thanks for having me, Matrice, and good to be in partnership with BCG, United Way, and of course with DRC, who we partner a lot with and have done a lot more with since the pandemic. Our strategic priority for the Citizens Council is inclusive growth. In fact, our annual meeting last year, our theme was growth, prosperity, and inclusion. And I think as in the wake of what has happened this year, there's a lot more focus on the word inclusion. And I think we thought about it first in the context of geography in Dallas, Southern Dallas vis-a-vis Northern Dallas. But I think it has really turned a racial lens to this. And our organization, which is comprised of the CEOs of leading and largest companies in Dallas, it's important that we advocate and support efforts like the DRC's DEI Council, but also take the learnings and leverage the learnings from our larger companies and make sure we share them with the broader business community, with an eye toward making sure that the broader business voice is very upfront about the need for racial equity. I think historically, we've allowed the not-for-profit or philanthropic and/or our faith-based community to be the only ones to have a real meaningful discussion about race and racial equity and racial injustice. But it's a business issue. The better we do here with this issue, the better we make Dallas.
And that's for certain. And it's great to see that kind of collaboration occurring within the organizations. Jennifer, United Way, you guys are doing great things. Talk a little bit about what you're doing in this regard.
Thank you, Matrice, and thanks for leading our conversation today. And I want to echo Dale's thanks to Aaron and BCG as well, and also say thank you to Tony Fleo and the team at SVP Dallas for an incredible big-bang this week. At United Way, since our founding in 1924, we have always focused our efforts where we've seen the greatest need and where the greatest inequities and disparities exist. And we know that people of color are disproportionately impacted by poverty, poor health, and lack of access to high quality education. We've served over our 95-year history as a bridge between the corporate community, the civic and nonprofit communities. And we have a long and strong track record of experience in convening and coordinating cross-sector movements. Over the last 5 years, we have continued this work and have applied an intentional racial equity lens to our actions. Some of those activities include our continued long-term partnership with SVP Dallas in co-producing bigBANG, which always focuses on combating systemic racism and driving equity. Back in 2016, we launched the Unite Dallas Fund after the tragic police shootings on July 7th in that year, to provide resources for long-term recovery and restoration for the community. And as part of those funding activities from the Unite Dallas Fund, we funded the launch of TRHT, Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation, through the Kellogg Foundation here in Dallas. And in 2017, we launched our first Southern Dallas capacity building cohort. And we were intentional about investing in Black and Latinx-led nonprofit organizations. The following year, in 2018, we launched the second Southern Dallas Capacity Building Cohort, number 2. And in the fall of 2018, we started including questions about inclusion and diversity in our community impact grant application process. And we were very intentional about funding minority-led nonprofits. Some you'll recognize, like Four Oak Cliff, Cornerstone Church, Harmony Community Development Center, and many others. The following year, in 2019, we were selected United Way, along with many other community organizations, as part of the first cohort of TRHT, Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation. And we continue this journey with that cohort to create an inclusive, equitable, anti-racist organization inside of United Way of Metropolitan Dallas with our staff and team. And a lot of work to that end has taken place over this past year. And last on this list, but brightest on our roadmap, this will inform all of our investments, our programs, our partnerships, and advocacy work, is our North Star, which is Aspire United 2030. It's our 10-year roadmap and community impact goals that we've set in the areas of education, income, and health, to build a North Texas where everyone, regardless of race or zip code, has the access and the opportunity to achieve their full potential. There are mountains of metrics within Aspire United 2030, and I'll hit the highlights in each of those 3 areas. In education, we want to increase over the next 10 years by 50% the number of students who are reading on grade level by 3rd grade. We want to increase in the income area by 20% the number of North Texas young adults who earn a living wage, adding nearly $800 million in wages per year to the local economy here in North Texas. And in health, our goal over the next 10 years is to increase to 96% the number of North Texans with access to affordable healthcare insurance. And as I said, racial disparities are clearly articulated within Aspire United 2030, and we have a commitment to achieving equity, focusing our efforts, resources, and advocacy to close the gaps and end systemic racism. It's a very tall order. We recognize that, but one that we are committed to achieving together with many partners over the next decade.
Wow, that's absolutely the best possible way you can create sustainable success. Very, very positive. With that, I want to go back to Kelvin and a little bit about what you were talking about. You know, it is interesting because if you go back to the days of Eric Johnson, where we had goals for Dallas, and at Strauss, we had Dallas Together Forum, Steve Bartlett, we had the Dallas Plan, all of these efforts that have been made, and they've been made with a part of the corporate community being there. What's different now than in years past?
I think the difference this time is how the pandemic played a role in this. There was a compounding effect that was coming before we had the lockdown in March. Some people heard of the murder of Ahmaud Arbery. Some people heard about the murder of Breonna Taylor, but everyone saw the murder of George Floyd at a time when there was no baseball, no football, no basketball. We were all stuck inside. And I think it made us all look in the mirror a little more seriously to say, maybe this is the time we need to have real focus on this by every sector. All the systems need to take a look at what has happened here. And I think that led to the sharing of stories and sort of testimonials, if you will, about business people as the challenges that they have faced, particularly people of color. And I think that dialogue forced the business community to say, this time has to be different, and we have to do things that are very, very, very sustainable, and not just throw out a bunch of statements and move on. And I think the persistent part of the pandemic, where we've still been remote, we've all had more time to think about where we are. I think that makes this time a little bit different, so that there's no coalition we put together and then we disband a year from now. And I think business plays a critical role in leading. I think it's been interesting to watch how the business community has been very focused on this. leads everyone in the broader community to realize how serious this is. And it's not just about hiring more people of color, or it's about creating a broader field and an opportunity for people who have historically been left out. And I think it would be very difficult for our large companies and our smaller ones to go back in today's world of their public statements, because we've all got them. We've all seen it on social media. We can all keep that data. And I think that will hold the feet to the fire for our leaders and for organizations like the Citizens Council to continue to say, this has to be a permanent part of our agenda and has to be a permanent part of our DNA.
Have you all started to talk about long-term measurements?
We have, and some of it, I think we're going to lean on the chamber some for some of the work they're doing, particularly around the board work, our not-for-profit leadership as well, to say, let's don't fall into the category of saying, let's quickly hire a person of color all over the place and say, mission accomplished. This has to do with, from the top to the bottom of our organizations, from our vendor base, and to how we look broadly at the community as to how we measure whether or not we've done a good job. If we've created more inclusion by looking to say there's an economic impact that shows that more people of color, that Southern Dallas is growing in a way that is measurable, we know then that we will be a more attractive community. And we also know then that by measuring that, thanks to the help of BCG, we will be able to know that our community has become better. But it is going to be a long, iterative process, and there's no finish line for this. This is the work that has to continually be a part of our agenda.
Yeah, definitely. Dale, I mean, you're putting in place some really positive elements that will allow it to no longer just be a moment in time. Talk a little bit about what you see as different this time for you all as well.
Well, I think what's different, Matrice, is we know there's a big gap in our community between the haves and the have-nots. I mean, you showed the slides at the beginning. One of the biggest gaps in the nation in terms of the haves and the have-nots is Dallas. We're already doing a lot of work in that area, particularly in education and workforce, living wage for Southern Dallas County and so forth. We're trying to piece together wins in Southern Dallas County from an economic development standpoint. But a lot of other people are doing good work too already. And what this does is capture all that good work that's been going on, point it in the same direction, so we don't duplicate efforts, so that we actually have a force moving forward where everybody is doing good, but there's not a duplication of effort. And we want to be efficient. We want to be impactful. We don't have a moment to waste. I mean, every minute counts here because, everybody's got one life. We've all got one life on this earth. And the clock is ticking. So I think we need to increase transparency and collaboration among everybody. All doing great work. Let's make it go more smoothly. Let's make it have more impact. We need to scale it so that we have leverage. We need to advocate with a relentlessness for policies and programs that'll make a real difference in people's lives. And then we need to track how we're doing, and again, as Kelvin said, BCG is so great at this. Measure our success and figure out where we're not hitting the mark, so that we can make adjustments and do what needs to be done to make course corrections. A lot of people are struggling. We need to put a face on numbers. We look at a lot of data, but there are people behind those numbers. People who don't feel safe at night. People who don't have a warm bed. People who don't have clean water. People who don't have a quality education. People who don't have internet access or childcare. And we have great companies in this town who are really involved in doing good. I mean, I think of AT&T, I think of Toyota, I think of Texas Instruments. 75 companies have now leaned in on Dallas ISD. It was a very struggling school district. Now it's one of the most improved school districts in the nation as a result of company involvement in the school. So when we put our mind to something and we commit to something, we can get it done in this town. And there's no more important work to get done right now than this.
Absolutely. And that's such an important aspect of what we have in this community, our businesses. Jennifer, you all are doing great things at United Way and continue, one of the best transformations that we've seen in not-for-profits. How has your focus on work evolved in all of this?
Well, you mentioned it earlier, Matrice, when you talked about how, it's not just a moment, right? We are collectively trying to launch a movement, right? And it's not a movement unless it moves without you, which is one of the reasons why this collaboration with BCG, the Regional Chamber, and the Citizens Council, and many, many others who we know are going to be a part of this work over the next few years is so important. Because we all know that North Texas will not be vibrant, thriving until we address the systemic barriers and racial inequities that are a part of our history. So as we at United Way developed the Aspire United 2030 goals, it was over a 2-year process to develop those goals. And as part of the development, we gathered feedback from across the community over 24 plus months. And we used racially disaggregated data to tell both a qualitative and a quantitative story. And we made a commitment to share these uncomfortable and disturbing truths to help drive the work. So, that's been an important pivot for us to really look at that data and help, let the data help drive the work that we will be doing together over these next many years. It's also changed the way that we talk about our work and community needs, and it has expanded our community partners and allies as a result of changing the conversation and changing the narrative. For example, when we launched the Coronavirus Response and Recovery Fund alongside the North Texas Cares Collaborative with many partners to get resources where they needed to go during the COVID crisis this spring and early summer, we got funds quickly to nonprofits because we streamlined the process. We created a single application that was easy for the nonprofit sector to complete, and it allowed us to get funds to some of those grassroots organizations that typically aren't funded in a traditional process. There were many Black and Latinx-led organizations that were a part of that, like Big Thought, the Concilio, Bachman Lake Together, Rosa Es Rojo, and the Muslim Women's Foundation, and many others were funded because we eliminated barriers that have kept those providers and those they serve out of the system. So, that was different. And, for many years, United Way has been known as a safety net, providing emergency assistance, food, shelter to our most marginalized neighbors. And we do that in times of crisis. And while that support is still critical, and we will continue to do that in times of crisis, we are directing more of our efforts to addressing the barriers or the root causes that lead to poverty, hunger, and homelessness. And the late, great Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, and I'm paraphrasing this, true compassion or philanthropy is much more than flinging a coin to a beggar. True compassion must provide a means to lift individuals up and out of poverty and address what led to poverty in the first place. Mm-hmm. And I'm inspired by that message and the meaning because it describes what we together and united can do to create lasting change in Dallas. The word compassion that Dr. King uses and charity, they're both important, no question. But if we're not addressing the root cause of the systemic challenges and inequities, compassion and charity could be just Band-Aids that may only serve to temporarily treat the symptoms of much bigger issues. So we've become laser focused at United Way on not just supporting those most in need, but targeting resources towards addressing the root causes and systemic barriers. And we've done that through targeted initiatives like Southern Dallas Thrives, which was developed in partnership with Frito-Lay and PepsiCo, where we're focused on breaking employment barriers for low-income women of color and providing access to higher-paying jobs in growth industries like construction. And through our Housing Stability and Homelessness Prevention Initiative, where we're not only providing immediate rental assistance to support and prevent eviction, but we're also working with corporate, philanthropic, and civic leaders to make homelessness which disproportionately impacts people of color, a rare, short-term, and non-recurring issue. So we're committed to those specific measurable changes that will help reimagine North Texas a decade from now, and building partnerships to help make that vision a reality.
Yeah, and I love the work that you all are doing also in terms of collaborating with other funders and
Absolutely.
making all of those things happen. So everyone's talking about working together, which is quite wonderful to have happen. So, Jenna, I'd love to take this to Aaron. And all of this is wonderful. We love the collaboration. We love what you all are talking about. Talk about the next steps going forward to make all of this a reality.
That's a great question. I mean, we're still early in the process of building the coalition. We've been working together for about 4-6 weeks right now. We're currently meeting with stakeholders across the civic, philanthropic, and business communities in order to deepen our understanding of some of the issues and the potential solutions. And then after that, we'll work to build the actual coalition of key stakeholders and community residents to develop a long-term plan that'll help us drive meaningful change over many, many years in Dallas. So if you or your organization, for anyone who's listening out there, is interested in participating, you can reach out to me. You can reach out to your contacts at the United Way, your contacts at the Chamber, at the Citizens Council. It's really going to take all of us. And again, we need to make sure every voice is heard or we won't be successful. One other thing I'd add is there's probably many of you who are also thinking about your own companies, and BCG has been too. We've been looking internally for a couple of years now, before kind of the recent events of this year, on what can we do differently in our organization to also look at biases, unconscious biases we might have had, and ensure in a more equitable environment. And I would encourage all of you to do that as well. Take the time to be reflective on your own organizations and think about what you can do differently to end any of those unconscious biases and increase equality for everyone who works with you.
Absolutely. Very good advice. And I love the fact that you're telling everyone to reach out to these organizations, including social venture partners, to demonstrate or to volunteer to participate in this. There's so much good information here, and people who have been active and some who have given up, and we want that re-engagement. We want them to come back to the table and to re-engage on this, because this is a different time, and we are moving this away from a place in time and a movement, but an absolute part of the fabric of who we are and who we want to be. So I'm excited about that. I want to talk about hope and the opportunities that are in front of us. So what gives you hope about this effort, and what's your call to action for your colleagues, for your community, for all of those around you? And Dale, we'll start with you on that one.
Okay, Matrice. What gives me hope is how quickly our DRC members stepped up and showed enthusiasm for this. We had no idea how they'd respond to it, to be honest with you, but there was really heartfelt enthusiasm for it, and they are all in, and it's really been fun to see that. Very rewarding to see it. I think there's a real appetite for meaningful change, for long-term commitment to this effort. The call to action, I say, is there's a lot of work to do. Let's roll up our sleeves. Everyone do what they do best. Make sure our community is crystal clear about why this is so important for the good of every business and for the good of our community. We have a lot of great organizations here. Great, United Way, the Citizens Council, BCG. They've stepped up, but we can never have enough step up. We need more to step up. Look, we live in a great place. We live in Dallas, Texas. There's so many wonderful things about Dallas, and it's the greatest economic engine in the United States. We get to tell that story every single day. So we get to talk about all the good of Dallas, Texas, all day long. But we also have a long way to go in this community if everybody's going to truly be a participant in this community and have a chance to access all the opportunity that's here. So if any community can do this, we can do it. I mean, we can do it. We know how to do these things if we just roll up our sleeves and work together and get it done. So I'm really excited about this. I'm excited about this coalition, wonderful partners, and I'm really thankful for Tony Fleo and SVP and bigBANG for this opportunity to talk about this. And Matrice, thank you for being such a wonderful moderator today.
Well, thank you. I'm glad that the chamber is all in. I think that that's such an important part of who we are as a community, and the fact that your members have come in, that you're here and at the table. I think that says quite a bit, because these are going to be some tough conversations. So we are going to have to come with a full force and be prepared to hear the good, the bad, and the ugly, but the promise as well. Kelvin, let's talk about yours, your hope.
Sure. Dale stole all of my talking points, but I'll go to my second page here, as he always does.
No. We've been brothers for a long time now.
Long time.
We know each other's lines, right?
That's right. I'm optimistic about how the business community broadly is leaning into this. But then even more so, there's sort of this intersectionality of every part of Dallas. As many people of color are probably being approached by this, who are leaders in this community, I think I'm on 4 different racial equity coalitions. One with Texas Methodist Foundation, where they're looking to figure out how to make churches in our states, across the state of Texas, work better together. Another with a large PR firm that's just doing surveys to better understand how people feel about racial equity and inclusion in Dallas and Dallas County. And so it speaks to me that many organizations are excited about doing the work. And I think that's what gives me a lot of hope. I think this is the way that we'll create inclusive growth. A big part of it is by focusing on racial equity. I think that lays bare a lot of our other challenges. And I think my call to action on this is for everyone to, and I know Jennifer and Aaron and Dale probably all heard me say this, this is not a 90-day project plan. We cannot get weary in doing this work. People will get tired of talking about racial equity, but we can't get tired of it because people are still experiencing the injustice. So we need to see both sides of it and say the way we make this better is to say that we are going to constantly focus on this, and we are going to change our DNA of who we really are. And that takes a long time. And so my encouragement to everybody is that it takes time, but this will be worth it in the end. And it's hard work, but it's worthwhile work.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Jennifer?
They stole all of my talking points. I will echo what my colleague said on the panel. I mean, the level of awareness and commitment to addressing systemic racism is greater now than ever before. And like both Kelvin and Dale, the investment capital and the commitment of our corporate leaders is unprecedented, and it's real here in North Texas. And that gives me great hope. But we have to make this more than a moment in time. It's got to become a movement. And like Kelvin said, the challenges are deeply embedded in every facet of our community and throughout all of our systems. The work is going to be uncomfortable and really, really hard. We can't stop. We can't backtrack. We have the opportunity and the responsibility to make Dallas the most equitable city in the nation. And this coalition is just the beginning. What also gives me great hope is, I say this often when I think about our long-term, 10-year goals. 2030 may seem like a really long way away, and it is. But this gives me great hope when I consider that the babies of 2020, the babies that are born this year, will be the 3rd graders of 2030. And we want every single one of them to be living in a racially equitable society where they are reading proficiently by 3rd grade. And the only thing they are hungry for is learning. And we want the 3rd graders of today. They will be the high school graduates and college students of 2030. We want every single one of them to be living in a racially equitable society, ready for success in the next stage of their lives and prepared to take on the world in college and career with living wage jobs. And the high school seniors of today will be a significant part of the workforce in 2030. and they will be the parents of our next generation of young children. And we want each of them to be living in a racially equitable society with the resources and the access to invest in their family's financial security, economic mobility, and health and well-being. So that vision gives me great hope. And the goals that were set through the Aspire United 2030 process, as you said, Matrice, they're not United Way's goals. They are goals that were set by many, many partners, by many, many funders. And your support, each of you participating in this session today, will be critical in order for us to achieve those goals and to drive the lasting change that's necessary for Dallas to become the most equitable city in the country. And so, my call to action is, raise your hand, sign on, advocate for these changes that we seek together. And in the next 10 years, we have that real opportunity for North Texas to become the best place for all of us to live, work, raise our families, and the most racially equitable city in the country.
Absolutely. Those are all wonderful words spoken, and we look forward to seeing that as our absolute reality. This is an important time, and it's a time that I am certain that we have the opportunity to capture. But it's up to all of us to make that a reality. There's not one segment of this population in this community that can sit idle and let this go by. We all need to act and be a part of the solution for the long term and for the benefit of our children, our families, and those to come in the next generations. We are down to 2 minutes. Aaron, would you like to have the last words before we close out?
Sure, happy to. Well, thank you to bigBANG, to this event, SVP, Jennifer, Kelvin, Dale, and Matrice for ably walking us through all these questions. I haven't been more excited about something in the Dallas community in a long time. While I'm not a native Texan, this certainly feels like home. And just encourage, again, everybody who wants to have a voice on this and participate. We want you to. So please reach out to us. Please be our partner, and please help in any way that you can.
And that's reaching out to BCG, United Way, the Dallas Citizens Council, the Dallas Regional Chamber, and to social venture partners. I think that in light of all that we have the opportunity to do, to be involved in this, to have your voice heard, I think it's going to be absolutely important. So Aaron George, Jennifer Sampson, Kelvin Walker, Del Petrosky, we thank you, and we thank your engagement for this very important project coalition that you all are working on, and we're counting on all of us, not just you, but all of us to make this an absolute reality. So with that, a final thank you to all of you, and to all of you who came in to listen to this effort. We are grateful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Guys, thank you.
Bye.
Thanks,
everyone.
Matrice.
Guys,
Great job.
Thanks.
Good morning, folks. I'm Tony Fleo, the CEO of Social Venture Partners Dallas. It is my privilege to get to work with the amazing organizations that you were just represented on the panel. Not only do I get to work with those organizations, but I get to work with those remarkable people. I am very grateful to the United Way, our main co-sponsor and co-presenter of bigBANG. Jennifer Sampson, Del Petrosky, Kelvin Walker, Aaron George, and Matrice Ellis Kirk, who moderated the panel. We owe them a debt of gratitude for not only this, but for what they do for our city every day. When anchor institutions come together to work on important issues, great things happen. When they come together to work on those issues, incredible things happen. It is my privilege to get to work with them every single day. Again, welcome to bigBANG Day 3. We want to thank the South Dallas Concert Choir for starting us out today. Later today, we're going to hear a panel or a conversation on prosperity by policy with leading economists Derek Hamilton, Colin Clark, and moderated by one of our own social venture partners, Roy Lopez, who is also with the Federal Reserve. I have been a fan of the work of Derek Hamilton for many years now, and so I am excited for the Dallas audience to get to hear from him. We have more breakouts featuring Dr. Johnson from the city of Dallas, Janesse Torres Rodriguez from Yo Quiero Dinero podcast, and advancing community partnerships with the Federal Reserve. And of course, tonight we are all excited about the United Way's pitch competition, and so we hope that you will tune into that. We look forward to spending the rest of the day with you, and so we'll see you in just a few minutes. Thank you.